Hello, I'm Dr. Vanita Rattan, and this channel is dedicated to skincare for skin of colour. As you know, I'm a doctor, but I'm also a cosmetic formulator specifically for the skin of colour. So today we have a real treat. We have our beautiful podiatrist, Dina Gohil, who is here to help us with our feet now that summer is coming. And I know that suddenly I'll start looking at my feet and thinking, I need to do something with that. So I feel like we're in the right place. So today we're going to be talking about everything from corns, blisters, do you pop them, do you not pop them, products you should be buying, fungal infections, all the delicious things that we want to know. If that sounds good to you, please give me a thumbs up. Let's dive right in. Right, so the first question I want to ask are about blisters. So we've all known for the last 12 months, none of us have worn high heels, and suddenly summer is coming, we've all had our vaccine in the UK, and everyone's ready to put their sandals on and go outside. And one thing that can happen are blisters. So the question is, do you pop the blister, do you not pop the blister? What do we do with the blister? So what would you do? What should we be doing?
So that is like the most asked question when it comes to blisters. So when we're talking about blisters, essentially it is caused by friction and the skin layers separate and a fluid filled sort of gets in there. Sometimes it can be clear fluid, sometimes it can have a bit of pus, sometimes it can be slightly red in color as well, where it's blood filled. Now, on the whole, leave them alone. Do not try to burst a blister unless it's extremely painful. And if you're not sure how to do that, I always say wash your hands first. Make sure you have a nice, very clean, septic area before you try to release or pop anything. Avoid using like a safety pin or a knife or something like that. You just want to see if it bursts very slightly. Just using your fingertips to see if it will come. If it doesn't, literally using blister pads on top just to cover the area is a great way. Because what will happen is it will naturally start to compress and go down, and the skin, that layer that's been separated, will slowly come back to the healthy skin, dry over, and when it's ready, similar to kind of like a scalp, it will naturally fall away, exposing healthy, non-painful skin, essentially.
Interesting. You know, recently on TikTok, we see a lot of this popping of blisters.
Yeah.
And
it drives me mad.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you know what the problem is, when you see something on social media a lot, you think, oh, that's normal and that's an okay thing to do, and then you start doing it yourself. So I think that's excellent advice, actually. We should make a TikTok on that.
We should definitely do
Yeah, don't pop the blister.
Now, on the rare occasions that the blisters are extremely large or an area where you cannot physically walk and it changes the way that you get on with your day-to-day activity, that's something as a podiatrist I would be able to see. The way that we would treat it in clinic is, first of all, I would use an antiseptic. We use Hydrex, so you can use other things like Clinisept. And either way, they're really kind of light and very easy to use on the skin. It's safe to use on pregnant women as well. And what I would use is a scalpel technique. Now, I know that sounds really scary, but for anyone who hasn't experienced it, honestly, it literally feels like I'm doing that to your skin, believe it or not, even if you have the most painful of blisters. And I would only lance sort of literally the bottom edge. So we're not aiming at the top or the side, contrary to what you may have seen on TikTok or other videos. And then it's gently released as the fluid comes down and away from the side. And then I would dress it up using different dressings depending on the type and exactly if it's infected, if it's not infected, then that would be kind of the best way to go forward if you do have anything that's a little bit more chronic than the average blister you get from a heel.
Excellent, thank you for that. All right, so the next question I want to ask are about bunions. So a lot of people get bunions as they age and go for surgery. Is this something that you would recommend, or when does it tend to happen, and what can people do to see early warning signs and maybe prevent it from becoming full-blown?
That's an excellent question. So bunions, people think, and they just associate it with, hey, I wore bad shoes all my life, I have a bunion. And that's not necessarily the case. So bunions are traditionally hereditary.
Hereditary?
I can never say that.
Yeah.
Hereditary. God, I can't. I still can't.
It's okay. I stumble over that word all the time.
So genetics. Let's go to genetics. Okay. So what happens? It just means that you're a little bit more predisposed to developing your bunion. So what is a bunion essentially? Now I'm going to use my hands to demonstrate a little bit, but feel free to have a look at a picture here that sort of kind of explains a little bit more in depth. If you've never seen a foot x-ray, I would say there's a long bone that kind of sits, and I'm going to use this hand as the example, and this is the metatarsal shaft, right? Now we've got the top bit here, which is the metatarsal head, which is kind of the side profile of where the bunion you would see. Now I'm going to use this hand as the phalanx, so the toe that sits on top and it connects. This is the big toe here, right? Now what happens is you get a medial rotation in the joint space. So it's no longer sitting nice and kind of snug, it's rotated. Now, how does that happen? It's a very complex structure in your feet. So it's not as simple as, hey, two bones, one little muscle here, one little muscle there. There's a lot going on just in that region. Now, the muscles here become tighter. So as that tightness, you get that rotation occurring. And all the soft tissue and structures here become a little bit more lax. So when they become more lax, it gives you that easier kind of rotation that occurs. Now, when that happens, you can't reverse it, sadly. It's one of those things that you can't just be like, okay, let me just push it back in and it's good. It doesn't work like that. But why does it develop and how does it kind of progress? So different things can affect it. Footwear, of course, is huge. And not to say you need to wear heels all the time, because I think that's one of the people associate with, oh, I don't wear heels, why do I have bunions? Flat shoes are just as bad as wearing heels. Right. So complete flat, not having enough space in the toe box will put equal amounts of pressure on the big joint. So that again is not great. High impact sports, dancing, activities, again, running up and down stairs, things like that can also impact that joint too. Other factors can contribute. Of course, if you had trauma or stress to the area, that can also be a classic one that kind of goes. And again, family. So if it's your mom, dad, grandparents, aunt, someone's got a bunion formation, you're like, no, I'm doing all the right things, but it keeps getting worse. It is definitely contributing to genetics.
Wow.
Absolutely.
I'll have a look at my mum and dad's.
You'd be surprised, it's very common in men and women, so it's not just kind of one person.
Okay.
And age, also I think you touched base on that, it's not just for the elderly. Younger clients also have it, so you can be born with it too. You can have a mild form of a bunion, and there's different grades. So you have like grade 1 to grade 4. Grade 4 is like the most chronic case, and grade 1 you have this like just a slight bump on the area, and the toe just slightly kind of more inwards in that sense, rather than it kind of just sitting up straight and then you have a little bump. It's kind of harder to see. Now, surgery, that is a very interesting one. Now, a lot of people would say, hey, I have a bunion, can I go in for surgery? What do you think? I'm not big for sending people straight down the surgery option. I always say that's the last case scenario. When it comes to bunions, I always say, if it's not broken, don't fix it. What does that mean? If it's not painful, if you can walk around, do the things you need to do, wear the shoes you want to wear. Now, of course, if you've got slightly more chronic case, which means it's just slightly more wider, and you're finding it hard to find shoes, come and talk to podiatrists. We have ample amounts of tips and companies that we can suggest that you can wear shoes, nice ones, not the ugly ones everyone's afraid to wear. You don't have to be kind of like suffering in the fashion department just because
that's very important.
Okay, you guys can still look fantastic even if you have bunions. And there's also different factors. So only go for surgery if it's super painful and you just can't handle it anymore. But be warned, there's only a certain amount of times you can go to have the same surgery, because even though you have the surgery, your bunion can come back. And that's something that a lot of people kind of don't understand. And there's a lot of horror stories about, oh, bunion surgery is the worst thing ever, don't do it, and we've heard so many. But that's not the case. There's thousands upon thousands of fantastic cases that you just don't hear about, but they do a great job. But recovery is huge. You need to be off your feet for the first 6 weeks completely. That's not, oh, I'm just going to walk around for an hour. No. It's 5 minutes for the first week, next week 10 minutes, an hour, and you have to build up, and it can take up to a year for full recovery.
Oh goodness.
Because it takes 8 to 9 months for the soft tissue in that area to recover, and that's assuming you've done everything right and there's been no complications along the way.
So I can imagine it going wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh, the cost-benefit analysis doesn't seem to stack up too well actually for doing that. Unless it's really affecting quality of life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So next question is about corns. What are they? How are they formed? How do we treat them? Are there early stages?
I'll take it over. So corns is something I see all the time in clinic. It's one of the most common procedures or treatments that I deal with. Now, corns are, I've heard lots of people mention different names. So some people call it chicken eyes.
Oh, really?
And everyone talks about this root that needs to be removed, but there's no such root. It's not a plant. It's not going to go in and start spreading its kind of roots around in your
Maybe
skin.
they're making warts. Do you think they're getting confused?
They always get confused between
I
the
can
two.
imagine the two being.
Always. But no, corns are essentially hard skin embedded into the epidermis, which is the top layer of the skin. So you can kind of see like this sort of concave shape where the hard skin is embedding. Now, how does that happen? With friction and pressure in a localized area over time with dry skin. So if you're not getting enough hydration in the area, if you have constant friction and pressure because of footwear or activity, or the way that the structural positioning of your bones in your feet, then you're more likely to get corns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you make such a great point actually with hydrating the feet. How often should you be hydrating your feet, and is there anything else you can do in order to improve the health of the skin of the feet?
Absolutely, that's a really good question. Now, again, this is not one size fit all answer, but I would say if you have a very dry type of skin, initially using a good foot cream with urea in it, at least about 10%, is fantastic. Use it twice a day for the first week, and then you can go to once a day thereafter. If you have sort of a moderate, happy combination type skin on the feet, then you can use it kind of once a day, and that's no problem. If you have very nice, soft, hydrated feet, you can use it every so often throughout the week. You don't have to use a lot. A little bit goes a long way. So if you're using a body cream or a hand cream for your feet, it's not going to do anything. So the bottom of your feet is what we call plantar skin, which is a little bit more thicker than the dorsal skin, which is the top part of your feet. So if you're using a body moisturizer, you go to the top of your skin, you're like, oh yeah, the top feels great. And that's fine, but it's the soles that need something a little bit more richer.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you probably want to, so don't forget, urea is a humectant, so it's a water magnet. So exactly like sodium hyaluronate, lactic acid, it absorbs, it holds on to water molecules, and then you probably also want an emollient as well. So that's what we're talking about by having something that's thicker, that's keeping water in.
Absolutely. And also drying your feet thoroughly after a bath or a shower. Because a lot of people forget that. They just kind of walk out, step onto their rug or wherever they are, and they'll forget about it. But the water will take away some of that natural kind of oils on the skin, and then you get that dehydrated feet quicker, and you get the dry cracks, and that can also further if you have a corn developing because the moisture is just being taken away.
Absolutely, I completely agree with you. So do you remember when we, for example, had a shower and we put oil onto the body straight away, because what an occlusive is doing is just trapping water on the skin. The second water is evaporated, not only has that water evaporated, it's actually taking moisture with it, and so your skin does feel drier. So this is why you must moisturize your body with oil and your feet as well. And I think that is absolutely forgotten. I think we start thinking, oh, I'm going to fall over if I put something on my, oil on my feet as I'm leaving the shower. So I actually think that's completely forgotten. I think we do the top of the feet and we forget the bottoms. So that's a really good reminder. I'm going to start talking about this more.
Please do. Another thing for you guys at home, if you're using like a foot cream or oils on the feet and you think, oh my god, I'm slipping everywhere, that's because you've used too much. So just making sure you start off with using a small amount until it's absorbed in, because there's only so much that the skin can absorb. And then once it's kind of soaked in, if you need more, add more. But don't kind of go in with the initial squeeze or loads and be like, oh my god, there's too much. Because you're wasting product.
Absolutely. That's expensive. Right, so the next question is fungal nail infection. What does it look like? How do we prevent it? Please help us.
Ooh, so fungal infections are something that if you catch earlier on, you'll have a much better result. If you suffer from fungal infection, you've had it for multiple years, it can take a lot more than just what I'm about to say to start off with, but I will get to that section in a very short moment. So fungal infections can occur on the skin as well as the nail, and they both can present differently depending on skin tones as well. So it's really important to have a look at different signs. Now, when it's on the skin, what you can notice is sometimes you get a bit of flaking going on the plantar regions of the sole of the foot. You can get redness sort of inside of the toes. It can start peeling, can look a little white as well. Also, if it goes into the nails are a little bit more trickier, so they can present in different fashions, again, depending on the skin tone and the way that your toes are. So some people will get sort of a whiter yellowish hue kind of developing, so that natural free edge, the white part of your nail, is what we call the free edge. So that definition between the pink and the white can start to disappear. And it starts looking a little kind of like a cloudy, kind of like, and it looks like it's kind of dipping and creating a new shape. Not to say that's 100% fungal, because sometimes it can be pressure, but other contributing factors you'll notice is when you go underneath the nail, you get this sort of debris that starts coming away, and it can have a bit of an odor too, right? And the sulci, which is the side parts of the toe, can become a little bit irritated, a little flaky, kind of red, and you kind of be more inclined to just kind of like scratch a little bit. That's usually kind of a sign that something else is kind of going on in there. Now, how do we treat and how do we kind of look after once we have a fungal infection? So you have to treat it like it's in your religion, guys, okay? So this is not something like, I did it for 5 days, it hasn't gone, oh well.
Okay.
No, please stay regimented and do it until it's fully clear. And even when it looks like it's fully clear, I always advise my clients to do it for 2 weeks extra.
Right.
Just to really make sure we can eradicate all the fungal kind of aspects in either side, whether it's the skin or the nail. Now the skin will take not as long as the nail, so you're looking between 2 to 4 weeks, depending on how kind of chronic your case is. If you've got an acute case, 2 to 4 weeks is fine. If you have a chronic case, it can take several months, but again, you must be patient, right? Now, when it comes to the nails, because this is where it gets a little complicated, because the treatment for the skin and the treatment for the nails vary, because you can't use the same product on the nail that you use on the skin. So on the skin, you want to use antifungals like over the counter you can find. There are various different brands, again, depending on which country you're in. If you're not too sure, please ask your pharmacist which ones they have. They usually run from anything between 1 to 2% as an antifungal. In some countries, for the nails, you get the 5%, which is the lacquer that you apply on top. Please do continue to use that, that's so important. But hygiene at home outside of those products is so important too. So washing your socks inside out, for example, at a very high temperature, 60% degrees at least, because there was a study they did and they found that even after washing the socks at 60 degrees, they still found particles of fungal present on the sock, which is insane to think about, right?
It's resistant.
Yeah, it's very, very resistant. So you want to be very careful with that, okay? And drying your feet thoroughly. Now, if you are cutting your toenails and you have a fungal infection, you want a separate set of tools or nippers for that. You don't want to use the same one across, because then you can spread. So you can spread them across, which is going to be the worst thing ever, because it's harder to fight 10 than it is to fight 1. Right? So definitely want to use different products. So that keeping it dry also is super important. So I know people might want to go swimming, or they want to have a long shower bath, or sometimes, let's be honest, if we're in the shower, sometimes the water rises a little bit more than it should. You know, we're all guilty of that sometimes. Now, when that happens, I always say, like, try to wear a flip-flop that just elevates your foot away from the water a little bit, so you don't get that sort of constant moisture going in that area, because it's so important.
Okay. You're basically feeding it. You're creating a breeding ground for fungus.
Absolutely.
What about sheets, bed sheets?
Ooh, so again, similar to the socks, you really want to make sure you wash them at a high temperature and often. So, you know, like socks you use once and you wash it. So sheets, I'd probably say, I know this is going to sound unrealistic, guys, but if you can, please try to wash them every 2 days.
I say the same thing with pillowcases and acne.
Ideally,
you do need to be changing your pillowcases every 2 days.
Absolutely. And footwear, again, is really important too. So fungus breeds on damp, warm, sweaty conditions. And again, where are you going to find that in your feet? Your feet have 250,000 sweat glands. So you can imagine, even if you think, oh, I don't really have a sweaty foot, you'd be surprised how much actually comes off in there. So you want to, if you have a sweaty foot type, change your socks regularly throughout the day. Wear breathable shoes, wear breathable socks, moisture wicking socks, like a combination. Don't just wear like 100% cotton, for example, because although people think, oh, it's cotton, trust me, you want something that's going to absorb and keep the foot dry in there. And alternate your shoes. Don't wear the same shoe every day.
Okay.
Give it a chance to air out. Use the antibacterial to cleanse and clean on the inside too, and that could be really beneficial.
Interesting. So will antibacterial help with fungus, or is that antifungal ones as well?
So you can't get an antifungal shoe spray, but by keeping the area clean as possible, it prevents from further contamination and further infections going on in the foot.
Secondary infections.
Absolutely.
Gosh, that's so
Sorry, there's so much to it.
There's actually like a lot to it. I think until you've gone through that condition yourself, you're not going to know just how much. Wow, okay.
And it can cross from one person to another too. So please be mindful, like if you're at home thinking, oh, we use the same nail clippers, please don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't use the same towel, don't share socks, don't share shoes. Like,
oh my goodness, how do you do this as a family? Honestly, you said like wash the socks inside out. I'm so lucky if I can find like 2 of my daughter's socks. They're the same and matching and put them back in her drawer. I think I've done an outstanding job.
Bravo.
Let alone like inside out and has every spore been killed. Like,
you're gonna go for like tell me, can I see anything else?
Oh god, let's just hope that doesn't happen. Yeah. So you're gonna tell me a little bit about the antifungals oral.
Yeah, so the oral antifungals, guys, please be really careful when you go to take them, and only take them on the worst case scenario. And you know, unfortunately, not all doctors will see chronic cases. So when I'm talking about chronic cases, I'm talking about nails completely thickened up, yellow, completely discolored, flaky skin going all the way down to the heels, no improvement being seen when you're using over-the-counter products that's available in your country. That's when I would probably say, okay, maybe it's good for you to try an oral antifungal, because it's very toxic and it can affect the liver. And when you are taking oral antifungals, you should be getting a blood test at least once a month, right? And I wouldn't recommend more than 3 to 6 months if you're using that. So really make sure you look after your gut at the same time when you're taking these things. So please be mindful of that. Try everything else first, and if you're not seeing any results, then consider that.
Okay, so Dina's got a fantastic YouTube channel called The Foot Scraper, which is brilliant, honestly. I feel like your videos are just so in-depth, it actually makes me feel inadequate with just me in my bedroom, you know?
That's so sweet.
Oh, thank you so much, and we are in the comment section for 1 hour at the launch of the video, so please do write your questions down below. Dina and I will be there to assist you, so thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to download your free guide, link is down below. Don't forget to follow me on TikTok, Instagram, and what else? I'm actually not on Facebook. I really need to put some effort into Facebook, I feel. Thank you guys, take care, bye.